Hi, this is David Deutsch, and I am here with my good friend, Kenneth Yu. How you doing today, Kenneth?
Oh,
Good,
I'm
good.
good. So super excited to see you.
It's great to see you. Kenneth is in Malaysia. I have visited him there with his lovely wife and just had a great time getting to know him. And I'm very excited. Whatever Kenneth comes up with is always very interesting. And I wanted to take this opportunity to learn about his latest venture, and I thought I would record it so other people could find out about it as well. So, Kenneth, I'm dying to hear what it is you've come up with this time.
Yeah. So I came up with something called the Napoleon AI blueprint. So just to explain it, what it is. Napoleon is the little emperor that conquered the world. So small little fella conquered the known world. And Napoleon, when applied to business, is really a small, tiny little business that makes disproportionate amount of income. And so we reach a stage, because of AI, we're able to do a solo business that makes 7 figures or more a year, which can't be done before. And so recently, up to recently, you need a Goliath business.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-technology, you need a Goliath business. That means you need staff, you need systems, you need a level of complexity. And so Goliath businesses, even a cafe right now is considered a Goliath business because it's like 100,000 upfront capital investment. You need a team, you need equipment, and the complexity is what the modern person and the modern entrepreneur is allergic to. Don't you think, David? So basically, we're allergic to complexity because the world is complex. You open your news and it's just bad news after bad news after bad news after bad news. I was on Reddit. I opened Reddit and it was just opened the World News Forum. It was just murder and war and even COVID related stuff. And for us as a business, I think we're striving towards that simplicity.
Let me ask you this, because this is something that I've heard, right? Like, as you say, used to be, it took to get $1 million business, right? To get a $10 million business, to get $100 million business, took a certain amount of people, right? Because as you say, there's a certain amount of complexity, right? You need people to do this. You need people to do accounting. You need people to distribute. You need people to take orders, process orders, do things, and so there's a certain formula, right? For every $1 million in sales, you need 10 people or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
And what I've heard is, and maybe this is what you're tying into, is that now that formula is out the window, right? One person can create $1 million or $10 million business by utilizing technology. And
that's correct.
I assume that it includes things like AI and the sorts of technology that are available now. So is that kind of what you're doing, is enabling people to do that?
Yes, that's correct. So the thing with the Napoleon business is, so let me give you an example. So when I ran my Goliath business, it was an agency. Mm-hmm. To make $1 million, we needed about 22 staff. So we did hit $1 million. We had about 20 plus staff. We had a whole bunch of systems. We had an office. Mm-hmm. So our profit margin was about 22%, which was actually considered high for an agency. But the thing about the Napoleon business model, we need to think in terms of efficiency. Because if you're one person, there's a lot of disadvantages to being a one-person business unless you mitigate it with a series of things. And there are 3 things you mitigate, so that you can have a proper Napoleon business. It's the business model you have, it's the audience you build, and it's the tools that you need. So those are the 3 things. You need the model, you need the audience, you need the tools. Mm-hmm. So with Napoleon, the first thing you need to do is you need the simplest business model that delivers the greatest amounts of value. So if you're a solopreneur and you're a service provider, you're a copywriter, you're one of these things, then that business model can't create a Napoleon business for you. It's because, you know, you're disrupted by clients, you're disrupted by the feast and famine of trying to you know, look for work while delivering on that work. So the model needs to change. And the model we identify for a Napoleon business is an email newsletter model. It's an email writing model, and it sounds like, you know, so obvious. It's like, it's what internet marketing is built on, right? Like, you build an email list, you nurture that email list, you monetize that email list. And that is very simple. That is what one person can do. That's something I teach my students. I'm not sure if I ever told you this, is that you can't drive a Maserati to the moon. Have you heard that from me?
No,
David?
no, that's great. So true.
You can't drive a Maserati to the moon. No matter how much you pimp that Maserati, you put the bling, you put the tires, you make it drive 100 miles an hour, whatever it is, it's not going to go to the moon. You will be on land. So if you want to go to the moon, which is, you know, represents your income. So if your income wants to reach a new level, you need a different wealth vehicle, i.e. your business model, to reach that next level, right? So you need a rocket ship to go to the moon. You need SpaceX to go to the moon. So the thing is, you could have the best service provider model or tour agency model or cafe model, and you could really pimp it up, but your income level will be capped. And it's only with an email newsletter business, your income level is relatively high. I mean, can you create a $100 million business by yourself as one person? Probably not. But can you create a stress-free business that delivers 7 figures or a little bit more? Yes, you can. And that is what the email newsletter business is, and it's overcome the Maserati to the moon limitation.
So why are you recommending an email newsletter? An email newsletter almost sounds like old technology. So what is it that makes that new again? What is it that makes the email newsletter a rocket ship?
Because with AI, you automate a whole bunch of processes. So again, you know, there's 3 levels. That's the model, right? So which is the email newsletter. But the email newsletter itself has, you know, quite a bit of manual, you know, writing the emails, getting lead gen and whatnot. So there's still a bit of manual processes until AI comes along, which is the tools. And then it speeds up the entire process. It automates the entire process. And now you're operating at the speed of cut and paste.
That's interesting. So you're saying, in a way, the email newsletter model is ripe for disruption by AI. That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things about sending email newsletters that are automatable, right?
Yep. It is. And the other thing, which I don't cover in Napoleon, but it's a side bonus, is that newsletters currently are the trendiest things to acquire. So basically, if you want to exit your newsletter business, you can, because there's a whole bunch of private equity companies that are looking to consolidate and to buy newsletters, which hasn't happened before. Which means you can say, hey, I built this newsletter business. Maybe I want to exit and technically retire. You actually can.
So can I sell the David Deutsch newsletter, or does it have to be like the paleo newsletter or something?
So you need to make So one thing you could do that is not illegal, and it's actually quite smart, is you have the David Deutsch newsletter, you replicate and you create another newsletter. So you tell your people, hey, I've created a newsletter, check it out. And it's a general newsletter. So it could be marketing, it could be business, it could be something else. As long as you know there's a paying community of customers, meaning the customers are valuable to the people who would buy them. And then you have, you know, that list of 10, 20,000 people, 30,000, sell ads there, and then you can just flip it.
So you're saying it's best to create something that isn't personality centered.
Yep.
That even if I write the same stuff, it shouldn't be the David Deutsch newsletter. It should be the whiz bang marketing newsletter or the whiz bang copywriting newsletter.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
I actually teach that to my highest mastermind students. I call it Babel buyouts. So this is a bit of a segue from
You call
the
that?
Napoleon Babel buyouts, like the Tower of Babel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Babel buyouts. And what it means is that Babel is, the Tower of Babel, where language was disrupted. That means people couldn't understand one another.
Right.
That
Right.
a translation needs to happen. So here's the thing, right? Direct response, the language we speak in direct response is very different from a private equity company.
Mm-hmm.
So they speak a totally different language. We speak a totally different language. And that's why a lot of online direct response companies do not get acquired. And because it's a chicken and duck
And when
topic.
you say
So
different, you mean things like EBITDA or
yeah, EBITDA, it's things like branding, it's things like database, it's things like ad revenue. So we
cost per
speak in direct
acquisition?
cost per acquisition. I mean, we speak in funnels. They don't understand funnels. So for instance, we speak in sales funnels. This is, upsell, 1, 2, OTO.
Right. Right.
They
Right.
don't know what funnels is. But when you repackage it, and let's say you have a newsletter, you say, hi, I have a newsletter, and these are my stats, the numbers that the private equity company is looking for, then you make a sale. Then that bridge has complete.
Yeah.
So
it seems like a good example of something like that is like what do they call that? The Hustle was
yeah, the
the
hustle was a big one. Yeah.
and Morning Brew
So
were two that
Morning
sold
Brew,
for like $1 billion each or something like that. I mean,
that's correct. So yeah. So that kicked off the newsletter craze. So right now people are buying up newsletters.
mm-hmm. And is
So
that the only way? Is that always the ultimate goal is to sell it, or can one make money along the way happily just having a newsletter and marketing and building a list or whatever?
the thing is, you're comfortable and you don't want to sell, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized is, and I talked to a multi-millionaire, 9-figure guy, buying a castle in France right now. So he told me this that was very interesting. He said businesses were built for legacy. Now businesses are not, which means a business has a shelf life. Any one of your business has a shelf life because of technological disruption, because of the pandemic, because of technology, which means you can have a business that's happily making money, and because of a disruption, boom,
Mm-hmm.
you go back to zero. Which means oftentimes the best thing to do when things are hot is really just to sell it and start something new.
Yeah. Scott Galloway talks about that.
Oh yeah.
He says whenever people turn down money for their company, he's always amazed. Why not just take the money now rather than having to make it over the next 10 years yourself?
Yeah.
That's
true.
Maybe you'll get a little less now, but you take away, as you said, you take away all that uncertainty.
Yeah, just because people all look at Google, they look at Facebook, they look at any of these tech giants. But what they fail to realize is 5 of these tech giants that have made it, everyone else has failed. Like,
right.
So it's like a 95%, more than a 95% failure rate. So the best is just take the money and hop on to the next bandwagon and the next craze.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know it's not, I want to say, can anyone do this, right? But I know not anyone can do it, but I think it's hard for a lot of people to see themselves forming a newsletter or a company that's eventually going to be sold to venture capitalists or something like that. Like, how difficult is that? Or how does it have to be a huge newsletter? Does it have to have 1 million subscribers? Can it have 10,000 subscribers? And it could be sold. How does that work?
So it's actually not very hard. I think with AI, you don't even have to do much of the writing. You just have to recognize what's good writing and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a hook, which really a positioning for your newsletter or your email or for yourself. And Napoleon just gives you a strategy using all the prompts and everything where you can just come up with. Because the gap is usually an execution gap and an implementation gap. Mm-hmm. It's not a knowledge gap because you get the knowledge, but you don't know how to implement. And even if I give you a step-by-step, you may not know how to implement because, it's fairly complex. IM internet marketing or online marketing is not the simplest thing if you're not exposed to it and whatnot. But with AI, with one click of a button, I mean, it's not just one click, it's one click and a few cut and paste things. You can actually put out stuff very quickly. And the gap really lies now. It's not a knowledge gap or implementation gap anymore. It's really what I call it a connoisseur gap. Which means you just need to be able to recognize what's good and what's bad, which is a bit easier when you have a checklist to see what's good and what's bad. Everything else taken care of by AI.
Yeah, I've heard that about AI, that AI, the people that will succeed with it are the people that know how to discriminate between good copy and bad copy, and know how to get good copy from it, of course. But also because you don't know what it's coming out with, you have to be able to tell.
It is random, and that's why that's a phrase or that's an approach in the AI community. So not the AI marketing, but in the programmers and the engineers in the AI community, known as the centaur approach. And the centaur is that mythical horse, that horse with the torso of a man,
half man, half horse,
body, half horse. So the centaur approach, which basically means you work in conjunction with AI to create something powerful. AI can't be alone right now. It needs to be guided. And there was a recent experiment that was quite interesting, and that was a group of amateur chess players partnered with AI, and they face off against a grandmaster, and the grandmaster lost. Like AI itself may not have overcome the grandmaster, but because it had human guidance, it did. And so that's really the approach to AI.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Everything.
AI won't take isn't going to take marketers' jobs or copywriters' jobs. It's going to take the marketers' jobs and copywriters' guys that don't know how to properly use AI.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, I think, is knowing how to properly use it.
Yeah, and the problem with people now is they don't guide AI. So I have multiple friends now, like who they were like, hey, I need to find a marketer, or they're hiring in-house for people, and people just create an AI resume and just pass it on without checking it, so they get actually multiple instances of resumes that are fill in the blanks. Right.
Your name goes here, or something.
It's like so lazy.
Yeah, it's the same thing with copy. I've seen copy that's obviously AI, or that still has whatever codes or prompts or whatever in it, leftover artifacts from how it was
correct.
Or it just sounds like AI, right? It just sounds like that kind of repetitiveness that AI can have sometimes. And it's knowing how to use it. And I like this idea that it's very purpose driven, right? You've got a very you're not just saying you teach people about AI and you'll be able to do all these things. You're saying, no, you got to have you should have a newsletter, you should have email marketing with it, and your aim should be to sell it in a few years. How big does it have to be to sell it? Could it be like 1,000-person newsletter? Does it have to be 10,000 people? Just trying to get an idea of what
I mean, you can even sell it at 5,000-10,000. You just don't make a lot, right? Basically, you can't sell anything at anything. But usually you want something that
it may not be, it may not be a lot, but it might be a lot, to other people.
I mean, you can sell it, flip it for a few grand and everything. So the ultimate aim of Napoleon, and because Napoleon is also ongoing creation, because AI keeps changing as well, right? Like whatever prompts I saw gurus doing stuff even from 3 months ago, and it's all outdated. Like they were cutting edge with their courses and everything, and you go through it now, it's like it's old hat already. That's because ChatGPT has totally changed. It's just updated, and it will keep updating. And what happens is with Napoleon, we want to keep making the tools better so that you can keep creating newsletters a lot quicker as well, which means you can do multiple newsletters. You can create a newsletter army, or you can just build that one big list for yourself. It's up to you. And then when you feel like flipping it, you flip it and create a bit of cash flow.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about automation, part of me is kind of resistant. Like I don't want AI writing my newsletter for me, and I don't want AI,
Yeah.
doing all that. Is there a degree of, like, even if you want to do more of is this a good thing working with AI in this way? Is it a good thing, even if you want to do kind of a custom, bespoke, newsletter, like I would want it, because I'm a writer, so I don't want AI writing my newsletter. But still, I have found AI can be very helpful in a lot of ways, in terms of even if proofreading. But a lot of times it will recommend certain improvements. So is that possible too, or is this just complete automation? AI, I mean, I don't imagine AI does everything and you just send it out, right? You're talking about discernment. You're talking about, like what is, give me an idea, if you would, of what is kind of the process. You wake up in the morning, you turn on the computer and you push a button and the newsletter goes out, or you wake up in the morning and kind of, is AI recommending articles that it wrote overnight? Like, what does that look like?
So again, we always go back to the centaur approach, right? Like, it still needs a bit of guidance because AI is really the smartest and dumbest parrot in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's both a smart and dumb parrot. So I'll give you one reality and two approaches. So the reality is most of the market is not that sophisticated. Depending on the market that you're in, most of the market, I mean, marketing is probably a bit more sophisticated. The actual AI newsletter, like, AI for AI, will be probably a bit more sophisticated, but most people won't find it a big deal if you generate articles with AI provided. You have a little bit of guidance and it's not too terrible. Like, and there are prompts and ways to just make it a bit more presentable. And then there are two approaches. And this approach I use with my own personal newsletter because I'm a writer as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is I just tell AI, write this email based on the points I give you, preserve the language, and make it Kenneth Yu style. So what happens is I give it 20 emails that I've written. So it knows my style, it knows my languaging and everything. I say, here are the pointers, write this email, edit it for clarity and active voice and everything, and make it Kenneth Yu style, and boom, the email is written.
And when you're talking about a newsletter, you're talking about an email newsletter, just to be clear.
Yeah, I'm talking about email.
About like
email
Substack,
newsletter.
Not on Substack, and it's not a paid newsletter.
I mean, it can be any of those. So really, it can be Substack. It can be your own mailing list. Your traditional mailing list is from David Deutsch, is from Kenneth Yu. It could be an actual newsletter. An actual newsletter and your newsletter is really just a slight positioning thing. It's making it less first person and or less about you, and make it more general and have some articles in it. And that's the only difference. So and really all you can do, I mean, if you have the time, like I can, like in 5 minutes, I can write the pointers, and then the email is more or less, then use AI to embellish that email.
So you're talking about newsletters, not like Gary Halbert's old newsletters, which are just sort of a long narrative, right?
You can do Gary Halbert style newsletter as well. You can do both.
You can do both. It doesn't have to be
you
like
can do,
small articles or,
No, yeah.
Okay.
You can do both. So the thing with Gary Halbert or you and everything is basically you just write it in point form. You feed AI your style, and it writes it out. So you don't have to
say in point form. You mean just kind of the outline, just kind of the bullets.
The outline, yeah. Yes, the bullets.
And let it write.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it's generally presentable. Like, it's generally quite presentable because it has your language, and because it's point form, then it doesn't need to come up with its own outline. You know what I'm saying? So
this reminds me a little bit of, like the early internet, when it was kind of a land grab for websites, or a land grab for URLs, right? Yeah. Everybody got URLs that they later sold for a lot. It seems like that. Like there's an opportunity at this moment, right? to stake your claim for a newsletter in a certain niche, right?
That's
'Cause
correct.
it could be your niche, or it could be, quilting,
Yeah, correct.
something for quilters. Like, it doesn't have to be your own personal passion, right?
Yeah.
You sort of-
And you know what's amazing about quilting and all those things is when I want to create a new newsletter, I look at the AI literacy gap of that market.
Mhm.
So basically, if it's a boomer, like like I say, quilting or bird watching and all those things, then there's less of a need to be more personality driven. Because if they're not exposed to AI, then that you can be a little less, you can be a bit more loose with how AI generates.
Yeah, you're saying it depends on the sophistication of the market. If you're doing something to
Yeah, correct.
copywriters, you might want to be careful about
Yeah,
what you give them. If you're doing something to quilters, no insult intended to quilters, you might
yeah,
be able to be a little less careful because they're not looking at AI stuff all day long.
yeah,
They're not,
yeah,
and they're not using it. They're not familiar with it. How many?
yeah. That's
How
correct.
many newsletters have you started? If I could ask.
I started about 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm starting a lot in the pipeline. So we're developing all the systems to build them out.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
we identify the market. Yeah.
And how do people, you've done, as I understand it, a manifesto about this
Yeah.
that people can get for more information. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what's in that?
Yeah. It's called the Napoleon Manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a manifesto about AI for building an email list and a newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And really is about fundamentally. So the newsletter is one point. That's a business, sort of strategy and whatnot. But fundamentally, everybody needs a mailing list. Everybody needs a database. So whether you're selling it,
Right.
whether you want to turn it into a business, everybody still needs an audience, right? So it's the manifesto goes into the philosophy behind using AI for email. It goes into why you need to build a Napoleon business. It goes into some of the strategic thinking behind the email, and also strategic thinking in terms of AI, because you need a certain framework and a mindset to play with AI and to cooperate with AI. And if you don't have that mindset, AI will actually be a tool that is going to frustrate you.
And we're putting a copy of that up on a site,
Yes.
right? At
Yes.
speakingofwriting.com /you, YU,
That's correct.
which
That's
is
correct.
Kenneth's last name, not YOU, but YU.
Yes.
So that's speakingofwriting.com /YU. And you can find out more about this. And as Kevin says, it seems to be not just appropriate to, if you want to do that model of building a newsletter business that you eventually sell, but even if you just want to build a newsletter business for yourself, for your company, or even if you just want to generate a mailing list.
Yep.
AI
just makes it really simpler. Yeah.
Great then. Well, thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on and telling us about this. And I look forward to talking to you again and seeing you again soon.
Yes, let's really do that US thing, or we meet in Paris. Like if you want to meet in Paris after the riots and bedbugs, that would be awesome.
Okay. All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.